Begone, demon, and come forth. By Samuel Plank. Pen name, Captain Samuel. Copyright 2024. All rights reserved. I am dozing off in the heat. My breathing is slow and deep, my chest rising and falling like the gentle waves of the great lava seas. The air shimmers and smells delightfully of molten sulfur. The gurgling of lava, as it pops and slops through the valley beneath me, is like a lullaby. I turn my head to the side to be more comfortable on the obsidian boulder that I am reclining against. I lift my languid eyelids and take in the glowing red stream in the valley below me. Crimson flowers, their burning heads atop obsidian stalks, sway in the ashen breeze which caresses my face. I love my home. I love my tranquil valley by the stream. It has always been my favorite place to rest and enjoy life. Carried on the searing breeze, a curse word reaches my ears. I open my eyes as the curse word is followed by another, louder and more emphatic. I sit upright, sending a scurry of black pebbles sliding down the slope into the molten stream below. A third vulgar word smacks my ears, reverberating in my head. I rise to my feet and take a few steps up the obsidian slope, looking for the source of this putrid language. Now the cursing is coming on in a torrent of filthy language. Carnal acts are described, excrement is referenced, and an unending diatribe of vulgarity. I keep walking toward the sound, further and further up the obsidian of my beloved valley. I see a tall, thin blur ahead, and squint my eyes to make out what is making this horrible slander. My vision comes into focus, and I see that it is a human. He is standing before me, or rather, I am standing before him. My hearts begin thumping as I look around a room made of ugly gray stone, utterly lacking in the crimson beauty of my homeland. On the floor I am surrounded by candles, arrayed in a dazzling geometric shape, several triangles surrounding an inverted star. The human ends his vulgar tirade. He is dressed in lustrous Avon boots and wears trousers and tunic that change color to match the area in which he stands. Atop his head is a broad, brown, flat-brimmed warlock's hat. Across his back is slung a black, tubular weapon, inscribed with the symbols Mazextane. He is smiling wide, his huge white teeth displaying golden sigils etched into the enamel. "Welcome, demon, welcome!" He advances, and as he nears the candles, his clothes change from stone gray to a pattern of white and yellow matching them. He sweeps his black boot, knocking over the candles in front of me to make a path out of the center of the geometric design. Then he steps aside and gestures with his arms that I am to walk past him and go free. I stay put. "Send me back, please. I have no business here." "Impossible. You're here. It's too late to change that. Besides, you walked toward my call. You chose to be here. Might as well make the best of it. I will find a way back." "I already told you it's too late. However," and his sigilled teeth flash in another smile of white and gold, "you are welcome to try." He bows mockingly and waves his arms again to usher me out of the pattern and into the room. In fact, I insist on it. My hearts slow their hammering in my chest. Perhaps this human summoned me by accident and lacks the power to control me? Perhaps he believes that if he lets me free, then I will not slay him in retaliation for a failed attempt at mastering me? He may be too inept to send me home, but perhaps someone else in this land would know. I grasp this hope and walk out of the nexus of mystic symbols and candles. "Who are you?" I ask him. "I am the warlock. I am your master." My hearts begin thumping again as I expect him to continue speaking, afraid he knows the binding words to speak after all, and that I will be slave to his will evermore. Moments pass, however, and he doesn't say anything or even move. He just stands there, waiting, his hands folded neatly behind his back. I break the silence. "What then, no words of binding? You're not much of a master, then." His lips stretch up into a cruel smile, and he points to a corridor leading out of the chamber. "You'll hear the words of binding when we're good and ready. Now, get out of my tower." I walk across the stone chamber to the doorway, but before I am out of earshot, I pause and turn back to him. I transform, leaving my natural state, and a moment later the warlock is looking at his mirror image. I can change, you know. I can change. The original warlock shakes his head at his copy. It won't help you one bit. I'll find my way back. Someone will help me. You're not my master. The warlock grins, and I am terrified. I flee from his citadel and burst outside. This strange world is cold. It has no fire besides a single orb of flame that moves through the sky. It barely warms the land, so that the wind chills my flesh when it blows. The fire orb sinks from the sky, and then there is no heat at all, and I shiver constantly in the darkness. Bizarre green plants grow everywhere. Gone are the vibrant obsidians, sulfurs and vermilions of my homeland. The land of these humans strikes me as a frozen hell realm. I long to return to my placid lakes of fire. Across this land are human cities made of bland gray stone and dull brown wood. I've been watching one of them, Southron Keep, for several days. Sometimes I circle above as a great bird, other times flitting through the streets at night as a bat. I listen to the humans and learn of the world. While catching insects, I flit above their heads in the darkness. 2 paladins stand on the stone parapet of the city walls. They are dressed in black and blue cloth, with silver longswords holstered to their waists. The chest of each paladin bears a coat of arms, a black shield with an azure stripe. Crossbows lean against the wall near them. Yeah, she makes the best wine, that's for sure, says one of the paladins, as he stares at the woodline beneath the city walls. I sure hope the vineyards will be safe again this year. Damn mutants burned them all down a few years ago, and they'll be fine. Maybe, maybe not. When the warlock marches, we'll be the first place he attacks, you know. We're practically his neighbors. Lucky us. Look, man, they're just gibbering creatures made of twisted flesh. You just cut them down and move on. There's nothing to it. You get enough of them, though, and they start to be a problem. His partner scoffs. You talk like a fresh recruit. Just get a cleric to line up a beam of holy fire, and a whole column gets turned to ash. I'm telling you, the warlock doesn't have anything new that we haven't killed 100 times before. We've stopped him 100 times, and we'll stop him again. Yeah, that's true, says his friend, briefly mollified. There was a moment where neither spoke, each human listening to the sigh of the bitter night wind rustling the trees below the wall. What about that vulture that wheels above the city? What about it? You know what. It's an omen of evil and doom. The clerics said so today. The other paladin draws his longsword from its sheath. It gleams in the moonlight. The cure for evil is right here, he says, and replaces the weapon. I swoop down the side of the walls and disappear into the forest. It's a boon that these humans fear and loathe the warlock as much as I do. The mention of holy magic and clerics swells hope in my breast. Perhaps one of these divine practitioners knows the secret of how I can return to my warm valley of blazing flowers and peaceful, gurgling lava streams. I resolve to enact my plan the next day. Now I am a paladin. My black and blue clothes are soiled, and a gash weaves its way down my left arm. After taking this appearance, I start my approach to Southron Keep from a great distance, so as to appear a traveler approaching the city on foot. Paladins watch my advance from the parapets, glancing uneasily at each other. One nods his head in agreement to some order and departs from the walls. I stand before the gate, double doors made of woven steel and wood. No one greets me or even acknowledges that I am standing there. "Hello!" I cry out, but no one answers. "Hello!" My fear rises as I notice extra paladins taking places on the walls above. Other than this, I receive no indication that they even realize I exist. So, I stand outside the gates, waiting. I watch the sun move across the sky, and the shadows of the city walls lengthen until I am standing in their shade. Finally, the gates emit a click, then swing outward. A group of paladins, about 10 or so, walk toward me in tight formation. At their lead is a cleric. She is a dour-looking human, short and broad, with auburn hair slicked back tight against her head. She wears the black, blue, and gold of her holy order, and holds a staff emblazoned with cryptic sigils. I gather my courage and speak. "Hail, my friends, and thank that—" "You speak to me first?" the cleric interrupts. My speech falters to an end, and I try to make my paladin body look calm. "You spoke to me first. How intense," she said. "Being intense is an evil omen, friend. Where are you coming from?" "I apologize for any breach in decorum, honorable cleric. My wits have left me because of my ordeal. I am an escaped prisoner of the warlock." The paladins flanking the cleric look uneasily at each other, and a few look down to double-check that their crossbows are loaded and cocked. "The warlock dragged me here, unwilling, from my homeland. I escaped from him, and now only want to return home. I am a powerful human in my own right, and can aid you mightily against him, if you will only offer me shelter and use your holy magic to help me find my way back to my land." "Where is your home?" As I think of the pleasant aeons of relaxing in the warmth of my valley, boiling tears threaten to slide down my cheek, so I answer quickly, "I don't know. I was hoping you could help me." The cleric nods. "We'll see if you are as true as you claim to be. Your intensity worries me, but I will at least give you a chance. Meet my eyes, and open yourself to my holy scrutiny." She stares at my face. Preparing for the test, I tap into my wellspring of kindness, my memories of relaxing by the lava stream, of burning flowers swaying in the gentle ashen breeze, of my good intent to help these people against the warlock and to simply go home. Then I look into her eyes. The cold of her gaze is shocking. My body is numb and waxy white as the frosted air bursts from my lungs and I crumple to my hands and knees. I struggle for breath, but the air freezes my lungs, the bitter frigidity making my skin and eyes and mind and soul raw with the bitterness of ice. As for the cleric, she screeches as her eyeballs catch fire and run down her cheeks in rivulets of steaming goo. "Intense!" The cleric thunders it. A proclamation of doom, a sentence to pain and death. "I knew it," she cries. "He is a monster, a demon!" She is screeching this word rabidly and stares accusingly at me from empty eye sockets. Demon! It is a warning and an admission that something horrible beyond her worst conception of evil exists in her land. Demon! A shrill whistle cracks the air, and a volley of bolts erupt from the crossbows of the paladins. The barbed steel cuts up my ribs, punctures my lungs. I am knocked onto my back with a thud. The cleric is still hollering, "Demon!" as she levels her staff at my battered, bleeding paladin body. I quickly heal and restore the integrity of my paladin form so that I can stand upright, whole and unwounded again. I hold my hands in a symbol of supplication and friendship. "Wait! Stop! I am no monster!" Yet she is blind and cannot perceive me. A beam of azure light flashes from the cleric's lowered staff. My left shoulder, part of my neck, and most of my abdomen are disintegrated. The beam vanishes, and a gentle puff of ash floats from my wounds, carried on the wind. A second volley of shrieking bolts rips my head off, my skull skittering across the dirt behind me. Reforming and changing again, I am a bird now. I leap from the ground to escape through the air. A bolt pinions my wing, and I plummet into the dust. Next I am a serpent slithering away through the grass. A second beam of arcing blue light chops me into spasmodic pieces of snake. I don't want to fight them. I want to cooperate for a mutual good. Yet I can't escape this abuse, using the form of any creature of this world. I must be myself, if only for a moment, to stay alive. There is an outcry of holy oaths as I take my natural form. "Cleric, protect us! A demon!" My colossal tail swirls behind me as I turn my back to the keep in preparation to run. In my haste and fear, I accidentally crash my gargantuan tail into part of the wall. Stone bricks collapse and shatter into rubble under the unintentional impact. A paladin finds the parapet wall no longer under his feet, and he falls with the rubble to be buried under the debris. My 6 legs, their immense muscles pumping, plow me away from the keep and into the forest. Trees crack and are crushed beneath me as I stampede away in panic. Then I use my charge to spring into the air. My 6 wings beat against the freezing cold sky. A few paladins regain their composure, and barbed steel ricochets off my Avon scales as I fly away. Once I am out of sight, I transform into a mouse and hide in the forest undergrowth. I am shaking with fear, my little mouse teeth clacking against each other. Magic courses through my body, healing all wounds. except my stomach. Something is wrong with my stomach. It feels queasy and greasy. I put a mouse paw against my furry belly and press in gingerly. It is hard and sore. I keep plying my magic against the wound, but nothing there is healed. I realize with terror that something worse is wrong than an injury of the body. I have been wounded terribly in some other way. I spend the next several days recovering from my fear. I remain the mouse, scurrying among the forest floor, nibbling on seeds. Paladins walk through the woods, hunting me, but I hide deep beneath the piles of moss and wet leaves. I reflect upon my failure, upon why I was so rejected by people I sought help from, and whom I also sought to help. I conclude that the humans of Southron Keep were too close to the citadel of the warlock and his unnerving influence. The way the townsfolk anxiously stared to the horizon in frightened anticipation of advancing hordes of monsters should have taught me that this was a human settlement ruled by fear. They did not understand me and feared me out of habit, because fear meant safety, comfort, and survival. As I made sense of this encounter, I resolved to try cooperating with the humans again. Perhaps other human settlements further from the citadel of the warlock would be more liberal in their acceptance of strangers. Any of these settlements, so long as clerics or other magic users were available to consult with regarding mystic travel, would be worth a second try. Hope for a return home demanded it. I set out along one of the roads from Southron Keep, keeping to the underbrush to avoid becoming another evil omen. I hear the anguished cry of a human being slain. Then there is shouting and the crisp snap of crossbow fire. I hustle through the ferns of the forest in the form of a wolf and peek out toward the road I have been following from the woodline. Paladins are firing at a shambling form. It stands twice as tall as the humans and looks like a human, but its skin is gray mottled with green, its facial features twisted as though some cruel and unnatural force had scrambled the location of its eyes, nose, and mouth. Its left arm is a stump of bone covered by taut gray skin, while its right arm is segmented and ends in a giant single hook of chitin. Hot blood spouts from its wounds as the paladins pincushion it with bolts. I then notice something creeping in the woods, but it is facing away and doesn't see me. I recognize it to be another mutant. I realize there are several beside it, and they are stalking through the woodline to ambush the paladins from the rear. Silently, like ghosts of death, they charge from the trees and slam into the paladins. One is eviscerated by a huge, mutated beak. The others turn to fire but are caught on both sides before the deformed giants. They drop their crossbows in panic and draw their longswords to stand against foes twice their size. I realize the humans will be slaughtered unless I intervene. I call upon my transformative magic. The trees sway in the trumpeted blast of my war cry. In a moment I am upon the mutants, my greatsword propelled by the powerful thews of a human warrior. One of the mutants, a bulbous form of calloused gray fat and muscle, has shrugged off multiple cuts from a paladin's blade. My greatsword collapses upon its skull and cleaves through its frame to crash into the dirt and hew some of the rocks beneath the topsoil. Another mutant, a gray giant with 4 arms, each wielding fists like boulders, swings to crush my face. I deftly move aside and parry its next attack with my greatsword. The impact against my blade is like stopping an avalanche of granite, but my legs absorb the shock and I stand firm against the mutant. I step aside and swing upward, and the gray giant's top and bottom slide apart, cut clean through in a diagonal line. The remaining mutants are fleeing into the woods as the paladins send a stinging rebuke of bolts after them. The surviving paladins are reorganizing their scattered ranks. One paladin, a balding fellow with a slight paunch from middle age, is directing the reorganization. He acknowledges me with a nod, but is too distracted from the attack to talk with me. I notice he is shaking as he sets up fields of fire for his paladins, and then he turns to the wounded. 2 paladins are sitting on the ground, one holding a bleeding gash on his arm, and the other is gasping for breath. "I'm sorry, paladins," the leader says. "The mutant's venom runs through your blood now. It's only a matter of time before you would..." A pause of solemn silence, and then, "What are your final words?" "It's better to die as a man than to live as a monster." "Then it's..." the second man gasps. "Better to die As a man, his face turning blue, he finishes, then to live as a monster. The leader of the paladin squad nods slowly and reverently. Then he neatly administers a coup de grace to each of his wounded paladins. My stomach begins churning again, as though I had swallowed some boiling grease that had managed to now lodge itself in my bowels. I have truly been ripped from my peaceable homeland and transported into some violent hell realm devoid of peace. Now the leader addresses me. Thanks for your help. We had it under control and would have managed it, but still, a good fighter against the Warlock's monsters is always appreciated. We're headed further north to the fortress city of Truehold. Come with us? I look at this human and my stomach churns in congested pain. Are there clerics or other magic users there, I ask? Of course, he says in astonishment, and his face scrunches with snide surprise at my ignorance. Then I'll come along so long as you help me once I get there. I need to speak to the clerics about something. It's a private matter. Well, a man who fights like you deserves the respect of privacy. I don't know if the clerics will see you, though. They tend to be busy. Nevertheless, I have to try. He nods his head. Okay, let's get moving then. The sooner we're behind the honest stone walls of Truehold, the sooner we can bury our dead and avoid laying beside him. He orders some of his paladins to deploy a stretcher that they carried with them folded in their packs. No need for that, I say, and put the bodies of the fallen across my broad shoulders. The leader of the paladins stares in astonishment at me, then recovers himself and orders the group to move out. We march through forests with somber green trees that shiver in the breeze of this strange world. Eventually, we camp for the night, and I talk more with the paladins. Their leader tells me he is called the Chief Paladin. I ask if he has a name, but he just stares at me in confusion and repeats, I'm the Chief Paladin. I turn my face away from his and stare out into the shadows between the trees. He tells me we're on guard duty together for the next few hours while the others sleep. Then we will be relieved to get some rest ourselves. I vigilantly watch the darkness of the woods, yet see nothing but the forest at night. It is the Chief Paladin staring at me that sets my hearts racing in dread. I know what you are, he quietly says. I hold my eyes on the midnight woodline, trying not to react, yet waiting for him to draw his sword and attack me. And I would like to help you, he finishes. Now I turn to face him. You saved my life, the lives of my men, he goes on. You said you needed my help. He makes no action to fight me, so in the hope that I have finally found a sensible, trustworthy human, I reply to him authentically. Yes, I say, I do need your help. I'm a traveler from another world, a paradise of lava and flame. The Warlock called me here against my will. All I want is to go home, but I don't know the right type of magic. I need someone, a cleric or wizard perhaps, to send me back. Well, the clerics don't help just anyone. Their schedules tend to be full, and there's an application process to see them. But there's always back doors if you take my meaning, and I'll do what I can as Chief Paladin to get you in. If there's a way home, we'll find it for you. Tears are welling in my eyes now, and I cannot hold them back. A ruby tear of molten pain rolls down my face to pat into the soil of the forest, starting a little fire. I watch its yellow ribbon dance for a moment, then snuff it out with my warrior's boot. I will vouch that you saved my life and fought honorably. You will be under my protection in Truehold and can live there in peace until we find a way to send you home. I promise. We arrive. I am shown into a little room made of wood and steel by the Paladin Chief. This will be your room while we figure out how to help you, he says. Stay put here and don't go wandering around. I look out the window to the pallid sky with its feeble sun and chilled air. Yes, I say, I will do whatever you tell me, as long as I get to go back home. That's what I'm going to see to right now, the Chief Paladin replies. I have to give my report to the clerics and will vouch for you. I will see what I can do. You can help me by staying here, remember. We don't need you getting into any trouble. With that, I hear his heavy bootsteps fade as he departs down the hall. The room is too small. If I were to take my natural form, I would burst it apart with my size. Uneasiness and a feeling of suffocation begin to make me grasp for breath, and I'm filled with a sudden terror and urge to run from this little room, run all across the land in my natural form, howling in fear and anguish and a wild desire to just be warm and safe again. My stomach churns and gurgles in sharp pain. I lay down, doubled over in pain. I try to rest for a while. I must have partially succeeded at sleeping, as I am awakened by the door creaking open. Cradling my aching stomach, I sit up. The chief paladin stands in the doorway, the light from the hallway at his back. "Good news," he announces. "In honor of your bravery and sacrifice, the clerics have agreed to help you. I am on my feet. Dimensional gates require a few clerics to open, so they're gathering the most experienced clerics of Truehold now. Come with me, and by the time we get to the ceremonial chamber, they should be ready." He gestures me out of the room, and I follow him through hallways painted a sterile white. As we make progress toward the chamber where we are to meet the clerics, we come to a gate made of glass and steel bars. There is a sign beside the gate written in cryptic symbols I don't understand. The gate slides open and we step through, blocked further by a second gate. The gate behind us slides shut, and only then does the second inner gate open. The chief paladin leads me into a large, square room. It is empty and barren, devoid of furnishings, and cold. The walls here are purest white, ensorcelled globes of light hang from the ceiling, giving a harsh white glow to the clerics who stand in a circle around the perimeter of the room. They are all middle-aged women with bodies marked by atrophied muscles and flab. They stare at me with frozen expressions. The chief paladin indicates that I should stand in the center of the circle of clerics. I drag myself into position, my stomach a ball of painful lead. One of the clerics addresses me. "We have heard the testimony of the chief paladin," she intones. "You have saved his life and the life of many paladins. We also know of your true nature, and will help you. This ceremony will send you back to your world, which is what the chief paladin says you want. Is it?" "Yes, please, and thank you. Your mercy and compassion to me not only repay my good action, but right a horrible wrong. I do not belong here in the first place and only want to go home." "Then stand motionless in the middle of the circle, and do not move, speak, or act. A mistaken ritual can be an unending torment." The room falls silent. The clerics bow their heads, then raise them in unison. They hold aloft their golden staves. They speak the unintelligible magic words as one voice. "Deodrasir dina denison, denison dina deodrasir, dinom dinom dinom." They shriek the final word of their incantation, and a screaming arc of sizzling blue energy leaps from staff to staff. The shrieking of the lightning grows in pitch and volume until the walls are shaking and bits of the pure white plaster fall from the walls. The lightning twists around and around the circle of staves, luring with each turn until it surrounds me. Then the bands of energy move inward. They crush my skull, press my arms against my chest, bind my legs together. The lightning tortures each nerve, and my body spasms in agony. I fall to the ground, restrained by the coils, my screams suffocated into torturous silence as my mouth is muffled by the cleric's supernatural bonds. The clerics lower their staves, and one of them walks imperiously over to me. "I'm sorry," she says. "Something went wrong. You made some sort of error in the ritual, and caused your own imprisonment. The anguish in my eyes pleads for death. There's nothing we can do for you," she says. The chief paladin makes no protest. The clerics file out of the room. As they walk down the sterile corridors of pure white walls and pure white tile, I see them all standing between the gates leading out of the chamber. Just as the second gate closes behind them, I see the chief paladin. A cleric puts her arm onto his back. She is either comforting or congratulating him. I cannot tell which. In this chamber of white walls and droning white lights, I have no sense of time. My reality collapses into timeless agony. The bonds of lightning torment every nerve in my body, each muscle taut with pain. The pain in my stomach is horrible beyond belief. I wish that I could fall unconscious or die, but I cannot. The gurgling, churning, greasy weight in my bowels makes any rest impossible. I lay awake in an eternal hell of pain, collapsed onto the floor of this room, unable to take any action other than bathe in suffering. I call upon my transformative magic again and again. Nothing happens. So I give up hope and just lay here. I do this for eternity, for surely this is the deepest abyss of hell. It has been aeons since my inner world has known anything but motionless imprisonment and pain. Yet eventually I recognize it, a new experience. The floor is shaking, and there are distant booms as of thunder. How long this goes on for I do not know, but my entire consciousness soaks it up as the first novelty I have had in an infinity of measureless time. The booming grows louder and the walls vibrate. Bits of white plaster fall onto the floor, sending up little puffs of dust. There is an explosion, and the ceiling is ripped off. I am free at last from unending white light. The sky above is black, and a freezing wind whips clouds across the midnight sky. Little twinkles of light can be seen in the vast distance of the heavens. Home, I remember. I had a home once. My entire existence hasn't been in this torture chamber. Streaks of sickly green fire cut through the air with each shuddering boom. Paladins are rushing into the room about me. They crouch behind the rubble of what was once the walls of my prison. They fire out from behind cover using a siege arbalest they have carried into the area together. It makes a rhythmic snapping and whipping noise as it automatically fires spears in rapid succession. A paladin is hit by a bolt of viridian fire. He dances about wildly in a madcap frenzy of anguish as his flesh melts off, leaving a pile of seared bones. This happens to a second paladin, and then the rest are overrun by a surge of mutants crashing over the ruined walls. There is a macabre confusion of flailing swords, close-quarters crossbow fire, screams, grunts, the crunching of bones. Men and mutants stagger about. An inconvenient object in the way of this brawl, mutants step on my head. I am kicked about by paladins. I am helpless on the floor in my bonds to escape this melee. The fighting stops, and the only sound now is the usual distant booms and the emerald arcs crackling across the night sky. I stare at the white tile of my destroyed room, and then realize with a start that I am looking at a pair of lustrous black boots and trousers of purest alabaster. Well, look at this sorry situation. Someone bends down, and the bonds of lightning snap like taut cords. I move my limbs and stagger to my feet. A man is standing before me, his boots a polished black, his trousers the white of the tile, his loose-fitting shirt the black of the night sky. On his head is the wide-brimmed round brown hat of a warlock. He holds his black weapon, the tubed and angular mazextane, and wisps of green smoke drift from his end. He smiles broadly, showing the golden sigils on his teeth. It is the warlock. His smile stretches his cheeks, and his eyes dance wildly with the thrill of victory. He laughs out his words with the joviality of a triumphant conqueror. It was a major pain to fight our way to you, but it's going to be absolutely worth it. We've got them now. They haven't got a chance now that you're working for me. So if you're finally done wasting time, let's get to it. The greasy pain in my stomach sloshes about with each movement of my body as I talk. No, I say. The clerics tried to send me home, but they made a mistake. There's still a chance. The warlock just keeps on smiling. From below a toppled shelf in the room, he produces a book made of golden leather. He holds it open to a page. I take the book from him and read. Ritual for binding and imprisoning monsters, I read. The picture shows clerics in a circle, bonds of lightning spiraling in, with words below the diagram. Diodreser Dana. I throw the book at his face, but he blinks himself out of existence for a moment, and the tome sails harmlessly past him. I turn and stagger from the rubble of the room, rushing madly through the halls back into the heart of Truehold, which remains standing. The spasms of agony coming from my stomach jerk my legs, and I crash into the white walls. I smash down the double gates and the cryptic sign outside the door. The chief paladin and the cleric who led the binding ritual are standing there to stop me. We know what you are, they cry. No, you're wrong, I bellow. And then, why? You promised to help me. An honorable man has no obligations to a demon, snarls the chief paladin. The cold gaze of the cleric confirms her agreement. As I look at these two betrayers, I can hold back no longer. I retch, and a little spurt of lava vomits into my mouth and past my lips. I gurgle and puke again, my mouth filling with molten fluid, and as the hope of ever again seeing my home has died, so also will these two wicked liars die. I empty the contents of my stomach, and all the pain is relieved as an inferno bellows from my mouth. I barf and barf a maelstrom of incinerating fire. The chief paladin and the cleric shout, Look what you're doing! You've murdered us! You are a monster! You are a demon! Then they are incinerated. Not even the ashes are left of their deceitful evil bones. The rage, the powerlessness, the betrayal, the madness, it all flows through me. I take my natural form, and the stone walls of Truehold are shattered apart, as I rise to gargantuan height. Rubble and splinters fly through the air as I shoulder my way free of the structure. I realized then that my prison was located on the heights of the keep. From my hilltop vantage, below me I see the legions of the warlock. Rows of mutants, crowds of shambling zombies, wyverns, giant snakes, all sorts of grotesque horrors, my true beloved kindred, marching against the rest of Truehold Keep, which is not yet fallen. The paladins hold them off with crossbows and siege arbalests, and the clerics support them with beams of arcing light that weave through the warlock's ranks, leaving ash in the wake. The battle is evenly matched, but not for long. I hate these humans. I hate them beyond all hatred. I vomit forth infernos of fire that pound the ranks of paladins and clerics into the ground, and leave nothing but smoking charred craters. Paladins turn their siege arbalests on me, and whistling shafts of barbed steel rip through the air at me. I bellow, and the shock from the sound of my roar vibrates the flying bolts aside, as if I had knocked a child's ball from the air. My 6 horns are lowered, and I skewer the siege weapons with them, lifting it into the air before tossing it onto a cleric who is crushed beneath it. I spew wave after wave of molten fire, vengeful infernos, and an ecstasy of hate, until the pain in my stomach is appeased, and nothing remains of Truehold Keep but a smoldering pile of ruin and charred bodies. I hate these humans, so horrible themselves, and yet they would pronounce me a demon. And by the very evil of their tortures they are right, and I am now a demon. I will live as a demon lives, and obliterate them all, for nothing can extinguish the vengeful wrath that must be scourged upon those who have made me what I am. Upon hearing myself roar this tirade, I realized then that the words of binding have been spoken, and it was I who spoke them, not the warlock. So, the process of my summoning and binding now complete, I bend down before my master. He climbs atop my back and sits upon me, his terrible demon mount. He wheels me about to face his legions. I lean back and lift myself onto my hind legs, my 6 wings spread against the night sky, my 6 horns upraised as I let forth a jet of fire against the night. The warlock lifts his dark Mizextane weapon up to the midnight sky, sending streaks of crackling green energy across it, and the cheer of the twisted legions below rises up. I will carry my master to victory, and there will be nothing left. Epilogue. Indeed, in the end there was nothing left. What followed was a haze of war. Regiments of paladins marching against me, their banners falling ablaze, crumbling stone walls, the shattering of timber and bone. One by one the cities of this nation fell before the warlock and I, and survivors, envenomed by the mutant's violence, found themselves transformed into hideous new members of his legion. Our onslaught was unstoppable, our victory inevitable. So it was that when the last great human city fell, the warlock ordered the construction of a throne made of the Abon-charred bones of his bitter enemies, the clerics. What personal pain or vendetta he had against these people which drove him to apocalypse, I never learned, for I was merely his weapon and not his friend. As for me, incinerating my enemies left me no closer to a return to my homeworld. If anything, I was further apart from that goal, for if the magical knowledge of how to send me back was held by the clerics, it died with them. The warlock seemed so obsessed by accomplishing his destructive victory, and now that his triumph was in hand, he seemed at a loss for purpose. How to rule his mutant kingdom, or even the motivation to do so, was absent. He slumped long upon his grisly throne, staring into space and muttering to himself. His monstrous legions fell to infighting amongst themselves, or retreated to dank caves or shattered forests, to live their macabre lives as silhouettes. Freed from my destructive duty, I spent my days in the guise of a woodsman. I gathered shattered trees and ruined timber from the wreckage of the war, and built for myself a stone oven from the heaps of ruined castles. Then I would crawl into the fire to warm myself, and rest until the embers died down, in an effort to comfort myself in this frosted land. Resting thus amongst my bed of glowing coals, one day I felt that the warlock had called me to his court. I traveled to him, and found him dressed in rags, haphazardly stitched together from the moldering, singed fabric of our enemies' fallen banners. His magical garments and wide-brimmed brown hat were neatly folded and set aside in a pile. Against the wall leaned his Mizextane weapon. I had never seen him without it. "I'm leaving," he muttered. This, too, was a change. I never heard him merely speak, for, rather, he always boomed and spoke with command. "I've accomplished nothing here. I've failed. Therefore, the first step to my new goal is to do this. To the west of here there is a mountain range, and one of these mountains is cracked open, and its fissure touches the inner world. It is a chasm filled with lava and fire. It's a place you can at least be more comfortable." He and I reviewed the instructions for how to find this volcano, and having assured himself that I understood them, he looked at me. "There must have been a better way," he said simply, then vanished. Against his wall remained his folded battle garments and Mizextane rifle. I flew all that night and into the pallid dawn, which as usual brought me no warmth. Finding the chasm full of fire, I gratefully sank myself into its molten embrace. It wasn't home, but it would do. I was decently warmed for the first time since I was pulled into this world. Resting there amongst the pool of molten rock, I shut my eyes and rested. And though I did not die, I also did not dream. There must have been a better way.